The 2024-25 Bundesliga season gave us power shifts, breakout stars, and managerial masterstrokes. Bayern Munich reclaimed their title with authority, led by the league's most lethal attack. Dortmund's year was marked by turbulence, moments of quality undermined by inconsistency. Mainz, under Bo Henriksen, stunned the league by qualifying for Europe, and this was also the year of the breakout stars. Michael Olise arrived with Robben-like flair. Omar Marmoush hit new heights at Frankfurt before going to Manchester City. And Hugo Ekitiké proved he's more than just potential. I'm Markus Fjørtoft, joined by co-host Jan Fjørtoft as always, and Bundesliga's voice, and a podcast friend at this point, Derek Rae. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you on. It feels a bit like tradition at this point, having you do our season recap.
Thank you, Markus and Jan. Yeah, it does feel a bit like that. We've done it these last few years, and it wouldn't be the same if we didn't recap the entire season in this particular week in May. So thank you both for having me on.
We are doing a season recap, and we're very well aware that this season is not quite done yet. You find yourself now in Germany commentating on the last few relegation playoff games between Heidenheim and Elversberg. But overall, Derek, how have you found this Bundesliga season?
I don't think it has quite lived up to the previous season, but it was never going to, because we had such an amazing story with Leverkusen, maybe a once-in-a-lifetime story with Leverkusen. So it was, in a sense, back to sort of normal business, but not quite, because we had some really good stories as well. And I'm thinking in terms of Eintracht Frankfurt and Freiburg and Mainz and some other teams who we didn't really expect to be in the running for European places. And we had a good Bayern team. I think not a great Bayern team, but certainly good in Vincent Kompany's first season in charge. And I would say it's been an interesting season, while not quite scaling the heights of the one before.
And we thought doing best so by doing a little awards, and we can within that structure our summary as such. You said there in terms of Bayern back to normal heights, and we'll talk about the breakout players and the standout players there. Also in terms of it most improved players, young players, some names which people might not be all too familiar, and what better man than you to comment as such. And I want to start, gents. I will just go in big and straight into it, but I want our player of the season. We want the audience hooked here a bit, and there are quite a few candidates I have in front of me, a few Bayern players, mind you, as well. But I'd be curious, and Dad, who is your player of the season?
Wow, that is a big one, because you always look for individuals. I mean, I of course love the fact that Frank was doing so well. So if Marmoush stayed for the whole year, I will probably put him in as a candidate. Still one of my candidates for the team of the season. But I think that because after that spectacular year last season, after Leverkusen winning the title, and now Bayern managed to win again, I will take my candidate from Bayern. A lot of great candidates there, of course, but I will go with Olise. I think that the way he's gone in there from his first press conference, when he didn't say a word, hasn't said many words during the season, but wow, has he performed on the pitch. So I will kind of, I won't say, I could take Florian Wirtz, I can say Musiala till he was injured and all that, but I would say Olise, for me, the player of the season.
And with 12 goals, 15 assists to his name, it's hard to say why not. 53 million euros, he came from Palace, and it's an interesting one because the expectations were varied, but I don't think we could have expected him. You would have hoped for a breakthrough season from his part, but to be the leading player for Bayern Munich and in the style that he has done it has been nothing short but impressive. And Derek, do you agree with that, or are there any other candidates that stand out for you?
No, as usual, I agree with Jan. That would be my choice as well, Michael Olise. And I mean, the thing about Olise is, and I was working with Patrick Ogomoyela on one of the games recently, and he said it, and he's not the first person to have said it. We're all thinking it. There's an element of Arjen Robben about how he plays. Not just because he's a left-footed player cutting in on that right-hand side and doing untold damage. He's also an entertainer, quiet entertainer in terms of his personality, because he is quiet off the pitch. But I think what really stands out for me is, and Jan knows this from his time playing in the Bundesliga, Bayern players, even though they're signs with a high profile, there are no guarantees that they immediately perform with a team like Bayern, because there are pressures that you don't get at other clubs. You're expected to deliver every single game. Your mistakes are commented upon on all the various talk shows, on Doppelpass every week, on the other equivalents on podcasts. And Olise just got on with it and really took to life in the Bundesliga with Bayern, with a coach who I think fits him and I think who he responded to. And the strength of Bayern wasn't so much at the back. It was okay at the back, but there were some mistakes. Midfield, yeah, fine. But that sort of middle to front section of the team, and Olise was the best for the champions. So, yeah, I have to give him my vote without any doubt.
And just to add to that, Derek, if I may, Marcus, is that Derek and myself, we are old enough to remember the time when English players going abroad didn't manage to adjust. And first of all, Premier League is so big. Why should you move? I mean, if you're a Norwegian, you always dream to get abroad, but an English player will stay in England because it's the place to be for them. And Harry Kane decides to take his whole family, go to Munich, have success, adjust to. I don't want you to cliche FC Hollywood, but Derek described it so well, because you're in another sight looper, you're another view. They are very detailed on your performance, and both him and Olise, and also Eric Dyer, we can throw him in the bag as well. Just going for Tottenham, being out in the cold at Tottenham, and going in and get enough games to give him credit for the Englishman to adjust. People from UK like to be in UK, except Derek, of course. But I love that, and I think that is interesting also for the German Bundesliga. Now you have you have Sancho, you have Bellingham. Yes, they were young players going there, but still, that is for people like us that love both leagues very good.
No, definitely. I think before we move on, it's worth giving honorable mentions to Harry Kane. First 2 seasons now, over 25 goals, the first player in his league history to do so. Added 8 assists to his name as well in the league, which is interesting when you get older and involving your style or adjusting whatever way you might call it. But yeah, wins the Torjägerkanone for the second consecutive season, 26 goals this season. Kimmich has been a staple in midfield. Credit to him, because he came under a bit of criticism last season. And then you have others like Ekitiké, Gurasi, and Wirtz, who, yes, despite Leverkusen falling short, got 10 goals, 12 assists in the league. And while this is a Bundesliga review, we cannot forget his 6 goals and 1 assist in 9 games in the Champions League in his debut Champions League campaign. I'm going to switch it up a bit, gents. I'm going to go into most improved player. Now, I think this is the category with the greatest range in terms of how you want to approach it. Also, the type of players, perhaps players that are less profiled. But Derek, what are some of the thoughts that came to mind under the most improved player category?
Yeah, I like this category, Markus. I think it does give us a chance to be a bit more creative. And it's given me a chance, actually, to talk about a Scottish player in the Bundesliga. We don't usually talk about Scottish players in the Bundesliga. They're rather thin on the ground. But Oliver Burke, now this is a player who we've spoken about, certainly in Scotland, but also in the Bundesliga for many years now. And it looked as though he'd sort of missed the boat with a variety of clubs. I think at last check, he's played for 13 different clubs. He's 28 years of age. Second half of the season, he became a regular. And I always look at the statistics week in, week out with regard to pace. And he was up there in the top 2 or 3 almost every week when it comes to pace. And it always says a lot when a player is out of contract with a Bundesliga club and then another Bundesliga club comes in and says, okay, we'll have him. He's available. And that's what happened to Burke. So Union have signed him for next season. Whether that's a fit, it remains to be seen. I'm going to be a little bit critical of the Scottish national coach, Steve Clarke, because he does not pick him for Scotland and continues not to pick him for Scotland, which says to me a little bit that maybe they're not watching the Bundesliga. But the way I look at this is, if a player like that is suddenly coming to the fore in the Bundesliga and a top 5 league, I'm not sure a country like Scotland, with inadequacies, quite honestly, up front, can afford to do without him. So, yeah, kudos to Oliver Burke, chance to give him some recognition, and delighted that he's now going to be able to have a new challenge in Berlin Kompany with Union.
I like that. It's a nice original suggestion. I didn't even think of that. Another Bremen player I did think of was Jens Stage or Stage, who obviously had 10 goals, 5 assists from midfield. But Ollie Burke is a nice one. Dad, who's your most improved player?
Well, mine Autobahn always will end up in Frankfurt somehow, but I will have some mention our local rival Breakout, who has had a great season. Was it 18 goals all season, Marcus? You have the details, but I think 18 goals. And it's interesting in Germany that we had to have a 9 for many years, and then suddenly every year 1 or 2 pops up, which is quite interesting, and also not like a 18, 19-year-old. It's like people have been there for a while. Just shows you that you can improve all the time doing that. But in a week where it's 4 days since I was at Wembley watching Marmoush missing a penalty, and Norwegian didn't want to take the penalty. He missed the penalty. Then 3 days later, a massive game for Manchester City at home against Bournemouth, a game they got to win. And then, wow, you answer with what maybe could be one goal of the season. Sometimes I feel the wide shots will always end up like a goal of the season. Sometimes I don't like that as a striker, because I will also just have a shot, but and then you're lucky. But that was a fantastic goal. So I would say Marmoush, and I will say that as also as an example of the great work they're doing in Frankfurt. And I'm not only saying that because I'm a Frankfurter, but I'm just saying that you had the same with Mwani that season. He broke the scene, and now with Marmoush going from, people forget that he was sold for 80 million euro. And at the beginning of the season, Ekitiké was the main man, So I would say most improved player gotta be for me, Marmoush.
Derek, in your line of work, so to speak, seeing players and being wowed by players as such, and I'm not forcing your hand to say, oh, that's what Marmoush did, but I remember the first half of the season seeing Marmoush. I believe it was 15 goals and 9 assists in his 17 Bundesliga matches. I mean, he was remarkable to watch, but it was even more remarkable because of what that is alluding to here in terms of what he used to be. This wasn't the quality that he used to deliver at. But then he came slowly but surely. The first season, yes, but then this season, incredible.
Yeah, when we used to watch Omar Marmoush, I think we thought we were watching, a good, decent player, but somebody who probably had a ceiling on his ability, thinking back to his Stuttgart and Wolfsburg days. But I wonder sometimes if it just comes down to the right coach, the right coaching staff, the right set of teammates, and confidence levels can soar. Because he was doing things in this past season that I think we frankly didn't think he was capable of. I particularly remember the game against Bayern, when they didn't really have chances in that match. Eintracht, not many of them, but pretty much converted all of them against a high line of Bayern. And Marmoush, of course, was front and center in that story. And the other thing about Marmoush, not to go off topic too much, but what I'll always remember was his final game. And Jan knows this better than anybody. It all depends upon how you leave Eintracht Frankfurt. You can leave Eintracht Frankfurt in maybe an aggressive way as far as the fans in the Nordwestkurve are concerned, but he did it the right way, and it was all sort of mutually agreed, and it was a very, very nice, almost sweet sort of farewell on that night when they beat Borussia Dortmund in Frankfurt in the Stadtwald. And so, yeah, he'll always be a Frankfurter as well, not just Jan, but Omar Marmoush too.
Now, and what made that special was that they kind of sold the Champions League. You could feel that because he was the goal involvement, sensational, his infectious way of playing. Because as you were saying, that Bayern game was a great example of how you can get out of prison by having that kind of player in games that you maybe don't deserve. You don't deserve a win. So, and I think that speaks a lot for the club. It speaks a lot for the fans that still, yes, that's the club we are. We wish you luck. That this is what we do. We've done that with players before, but now it's down to the hard work for half of the season. Now we just have to see, and at the end of it, and they get into Champions League without their best player, which is impressive, Marcus. And sorry for just talking about Eintracht Frankfurt, but over to you, host.
I suspect that there might be some other mentions of Eintracht within this list, but we'll see as we go into young player of the season. Now, mind you, both Wirtz and Musiala do qualify if people want to mention that. There are obviously other breakout players and young players that of which the audience will be familiar with, but maybe to a lesser extent than Wirtz and Musiala. But Derek, who is your young player of the season? And this is under 23s, by the way. Under 23s is the cutoff.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at so when you say under 23, 23 and under, would 23 qualify as well?
23 would qualify. Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, you definitely could mention Nick Woltemade in that category.
Exactly. He's in here.
Yeah, he's been sensational. I'm not going to go with Woltemade because I've actually got him in a slightly different category that we might get to later on. I am going to throw into the discussion a defender for Augsburg, Christian Matsima, who has just blown us away for a defender in his first season in the Bundesliga. Just seems to have absolutely everything. And Augsburg got him from Monaco, and delighted to be able to have him now as their own player. Frankly, I wonder if he's going to be able to stay at Augsburg because they have a reputation for, as soon as there is interest from a big club somewhere and there's a big transfer fee to be had, they will sell. They've done that quite a bit. But I don't think I saw a bad performance from Matsima, and he was richly praised by Jes Torup and everybody in Augsburg, and has a very bright future. You can imagine him certainly playing at a high level in the Premier League, and it's a tribute to Augsburg that they spotted the potential to sign him. Woltemade for sure, has to be in the discussion if we're talking about players of that age group, and of course Wirtz and Musiala. But I think it's always nice to recognise players who may be slightly off the radar, but I think he's going to be on the radar, Matsima, for some time to come.
Well, yeah, I agree with normally always with Derek and the things he's saying there, but if you can go Bischoff, you can go to Hoffenheim, you can go somewhere else. But Marcus, I apologize. I will go to Frankfurt again, and I will, of course, Wirtz and Musiala. But I think that when we're talking about different talents now, there is a great goalkeeper coming through, and I just so feel sorry for him. Having said that, what Trapp did, timings-wise, being injured, then coming back, being very decisive at the end of the season, giving them that experience, giving that Rückhalt that you need in the end a game of the season. But I would say Santos, if he comes back now fit from his injury, there is a top goalkeeper. I could say Brown. I talk to the Americans about Brown because sometimes when I'm at ESPN, we don't talk a lot about Brown. They say, how good is he? And I great player. But I would go Santos, Marcus, the goalkeeper of Eintracht Frankfurt. Yeah. Maybe funny because you may say that he was a number 2, but it just shows you at the end of the season, first of all, how important it is to have 2 good goalkeepers. And it also shows how important it is to have 2 good goalkeepers with a different kind of profile. One one that understands that he is a legend at the club, Kevin Trapp. He won't make any harm there. Of course, he wants to play. But then you have Santos, a young goalkeeper coming through. And sometimes you feel that Kevin Trapp will know exact the time that he's going to leave the club anyway. He's that kind of guy. He can take a couple of years in the MLS or whatever. You can see him in Los Angeles just by the look of him. You can see him being better than all the Hollywood actors anyway. So, yes, I will go Santos, Marcus, as my young player of the year season.
Yeah, and Santos, he had a good run in Europe as well. You mentioned Nathaniel Brown, Paul Nebel at Mainz, obviously a candidate, Tom Bischoff. Yeah, a lot of good candidates as well. And yeah, like I said initially, there's a good crop of young players coming up, and Tom Bischoff we will see in the Bayern shirt over the summer in the Club World Cup. Talking about signings, we're going to go into the next category, and that is best signing. There are a few ways to approach this as well. But Derek, the stage is yours.
Yeah, so I mentioned, I probably gave the game away a bit too early there. I think Nick Wouters, for me, signing of the season. Now, why? Well, we've been hearing about Wouters for many years and what he had offered. And at Bremen wasn't getting enough of a look in, and he actually went a long time without scoring a goal. And got his experience in the Zweite Bundesliga and then made the step up to Stuttgart. But I think that this is a player who is going to excite us in the Bundesliga for the next few years. And he's got those sort of... It's funny because I've heard him being given a couple of nicknames. One of them is Volta Messi because, he can score goals, maybe not quite as good as Messi, but in a similar sort of vein. And then the other one I quite like is Volta Müller, because he's got a little bit of the Thomas Müller unpredictability about him as well. And I love his personality, very intelligent guy, very disarming. And, Stuttgart didn't have the best of seasons, but it was very much a strong season for Wouters. And of course, they're in the DFB Pokal final, which I'm going to in a few days' time in Berlin against Arminia Bielefeld. So, you're right. I mean, this is a difficult category because you could say, Michael Olise, why not? Maybe best player in the league, and would that be the best signing? You could certainly come up with somebody like that. But I think Nick Wouters for me.
He's a funny... No, go ahead.
It's a difficult category because will you go when you spend a lot of money on a player and he will be okay, that should be expected. The reason I will go Olise is that I think it is interesting in terms of the strategy of Bayern, because Bayern is a club that is hard to find where is our market. Of course, their market is in the Bundesliga, and yes, when we talk to football fans in the UK, they say, but they're just weak and there are other teams. But you can understand them because that is their main market. And yes, they will always look for if they will look for a Haaland, if they will look for the players that are available. A Florian Wirtz, of course, they should be on duty to try to get them. Olise is interesting because also Max Eberl and the team around him has been a bit criticized that they haven't found the right players to take them to the next step. So here they go to Crystal Palace and get Olise. We know Olise. We've seen Olise. We saw Esse on Saturday. We have seen the great players that they have produced in South London. But that's not been a market of Bayern. So I will go Olise because they kind of dip into a new market with a new kind of player type, so to say. We talked about the Robben thing, and yes, but Robben back in the days, a good example, that was a guy that had failed in Real Madrid, failed, quote, but still a new market. So I will say that it is Olise. I think also that has a big consequence for the strategy of Max Eberl because he sees that there are other markets he can go for. He also see with Dyer, Kane, Olise, it's interesting to go to England because they are just like I was talking to before. So maybe we can see more players coming from the Premier League to Bayern as well.
It's an interesting point as the football landscape shifts and Bayern can't recruit the same way they did before. Perhaps the Wirtz saga, so to speak, will be an interesting example of such. Also worth mentioning, I am a big fan of Tim Kleindienst, who made his Germany debut back in October as well. a good old center forward, but also with the ability to set his teammates up. He had 7 assists, his name, 16 goals, and almost taken over that little Füllkrug-esque role in the German national team as well. 4 goals in 6 games for Germany as well. It's just a shame about his now meniscus and will be out for a few months, and which will certainly keep him at Gladbach. Last category before we go into a bit of a free ride with some other stuff we want to discuss, but manager of the season. And here's obviously an opportunity to speak about the teams as much as the coach. Dad, let's start with you. Who's your manager of the season?
Also interesting because you have to define what is a manager of the season. I mean, you can say Bo Henriksen into Europe with Mainz, got a great management there with Christian Heidel are back. They have found the values of the Mainz that remember back in the days with the Klopp and the Tuchel. And they had that in common, that Christian Heidel was around. So they are back to the basic. I could also say Dino Topmöller getting into Champions League is a fantastic achievement after losing your best player, be a best player. Kompany steadying the ship. I mean, I was skeptical to him at the beginning of the season because he was the 6th choice. He came from Burnley with a kind of image that he only had that plan A, but wow, respect to him, what he has achieved in the Bundesliga. So a lot of candidates going on there, and also in the season we alluded to it in the beginning of this episode, was that after Leverkusen last season, you expected Dortmund, you expected RB Leipzig to understand, yeah, we can beat Bayern, we can go into that. And at the end of the day, Leipzig is not even in Europe, and Dortmund so happy to get my coach of the season because I have to give that to Niko Kovac. Because Niko Kovac came in after Şahin, who they tried to have that kind of thing that we need one of our own. They had that with Terzic going to the final. He was a fan and is still a fan of Dortmund. And then they get Kovac. And as I said last time, Markus, was interesting. I discussed Niko Kovac with this high-profile guy in the Bundesliga, and I said there is no better coach in the world coming into a team, organize the team, get them going, get them running, get them disciplined. And he took over. I think they were 11th, and he took them into Champions League. So for me, the coach of the season in our jury work is, for me, is Niko Kovac.
Derek?
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything that I heard there from the Norwegian jury. So from the Scottish jury, I think, since we're just a few days on from the Eurovision Song Contest, I think that you could go a number of different ways. And I think it's really close. You can make a case for so many here. I think Kompany, on the one hand, I like the way he acquitted himself in press conferences. I think his honesty came through. I think his humanity came through. And again, let's not underestimate how difficult it is. German's not his first language. It would be his 4th or 5th language, probably. Spoke it when he was at Hamburg as a young player, but got through the press conferences really well. And I think put his own stamp on the team coaching-wise as well. But there are other candidates. I mean, Kovac is really compelling to me because what he did was pretty remarkable. You could say Dortmund shouldn't have been in that position. You know, with that squad, they shouldn't have been way down in 11th. And I suppose there's an argument that, you know, he was just doing what that Dortmund squad, should give you as a coach. But he still had to go and do it. And a very difficult manner of doing it, you know, in terms of all those wins that they racked up near the end of the season. So he's really high up on my list. Bo Henriksen, I thought was a breath of fresh air. I think he's unique. I think he's, whether this is going to sustain over the long haul, and of course, being in Europe is going to be a challenge for Mainz, but a good challenge. And I think we need characters like that. We have one. Dino Topmöller deserves credit because he's done what other Frankfurt coaches have not been able to do, and getting them over the line with a good squad, you know, helped by players like Ekitiké. But I think if you're asking me to say one coach as coach of the year, I would actually give it to Julian Schuster. Now, they missed out on the big prize of the Champions League, but still, you know, first season after Christian Streich, after the legend leaves, And I honestly thought, yeah, if they're mid-table, that maybe wouldn't be a huge surprise, because massive shoes to fill. But former captain there under Christian Streich, and I thought he made go a very long way. I mean, a negative goal difference in the end. So, they were winning matches in a tight fashion. But there they are in the Europa League. And for Freiburg, that to me is a huge compliment for Julian Schuster and what he did in his first season in charge.
Great shout. And it's interesting, Mark, it's also the way that Freiburg goes. So we didn't know we knew the leader qualities of Schuster. Of course we did, because he was the captain and you can see it with your eyes. But for Freiburg, the model of Freiburg, this is not the first time they did that. Streich they took from the junior department. He was around there for many, many years. So define what kind of coach you want. The consequences of that is to give it to Schuster, and then a success. And I think it's a good analysis from Derek there, because maybe the first week after you didn't win against Frankfurt, you will be a bit disappointed of the season, but for them to go into the Europa League, being so close to getting to Champions League, is a great success. I think that is a great shot.
And that concludes our awards from the Bundesliga 24-25 season. And all that remains then is, Derek, I challenge you on the Bundesliga team of the season. And Dad and I are curious as to who you've mustered through. And then we have the very fortunate role of just being just the critical kind of understudy and say, okay, what you got right and wrong? But no, the stage is yours.
No, criticism always fully deserved and welcome.
I'm sure as well.
I'll run through my team. And so in goal, I have Robin Zentner from Mainz, who I thought was terrific and best season he's ever produced. I've gone with a back three, and I've got two Leverkusen players in there, in Jonathan Tah and Piero Hincapié, who I thought improved over the course of the season. And I've got Robin Koch from Eintracht Frankfurt as the other member of that back three. I've gone with two in midfield. So Joshua Kimmich, to me, has to be there because he is the fulcrum for Bayern and didn't really have bad games. And Nadim Amiri, so another Mainz player. So I'm sort of going with the Mainz theme a little bit here, but I thought he was just spectacular. And again, somebody who has improved with a change of scenery. Then we get to sort of the strength, and we spoke about this of the Bayern team in those attacking positions. So I've gone with three, if you like, sort of attacking players behind the striker. And the three would be Michael Olise, of course. And then I think it's impossible to not pick Florian Wirtz and Jamal Musiala, even though Musiala was injured towards the end of the season. But special mention for Nick Woltemade, who could fit in somewhere there if you had to try to do it. And then when it comes down to it, Harry Kane, as you said, Markus, winner of the Torjägerkanone. So he gets the centre-forward position. So that is my team in a sort of a 3-2-3-1 formation.
Well, interesting team, and I will do my later in another episode. But it all depends. Derek went easy way because he made a system to get into all his best players. He's the Ancelotti of TV. Ancelotti of TV. He knows where to get him. So if you give it a back four, you could maybe think of Rasmus Christensen. You could have Raum or the Mittelstädt left, those kind of players. But rest of the team, I think I agree. Zentner had a great season. Again, a player whose age is against him, so to say. So it's brilliant to see. So who am I to judge Derek Rae's team, who is Mr. Bundesliga?
Well, we'll have after this episode, stay tuned on our YouTube page, and we will post our respective team of the seasons, also a summary of the awards. But gents, that concludes actually our Bundesliga season recap. What a season it has been. Still a couple more games for Derek to commentate on as well. But Derek, it's always such a pleasure to have you on, and then hopefully we'll catch up very soon.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks, guys. It's always nice for me just to formulate my thoughts at the end of a season, because until you ask me these questions, I don't necessarily think them all through. But now we've done it, and yeah, great to be with you both.
Yeah, auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Bis zum nächsten Mal.